This is Belgium, and right here on its eastern edge, something is wrong with the map. These pieces? Germany, legally, officially, completely German, except they're entirely surrounded by Belgium. You technically have to go through another country to reach the rest of Germany. That one house, still Germany. And the things surrounding them? A Belgian bike path. A single decision at a peace conference in 1919 did all this. It handed 60,000 German speakers to a country they never chose, and it helped trigger one of the deadliest battles in the Second World War, and it left 5 pieces of Germany permanently surrounded by a foreign country. 100 years later, they're still there. Before any of this gets weird, you need to understand that the bike path you just saw, before it was a cycle path, it was a railway, the Vennbahn. Saint-Vite, 1850, population around 1,100 people. A quiet market town sitting where old Roman roads cross medieval trading routes. Important to farmers and merchants passing through, but not much else. Then, in 1887, the Vennbahn arrived. Saint-Vite changed almost overnight. Within 30 years, the population more than doubled. Every second person was working at the railroad in some capacity. The repair sheds alone employed 700 people. At its peak, 26 separate lines converged at the station, up to 1,000 wagons loaded and dispatched every single day. The Vennbahn ran from Aachen in Germany south all the way down to Luxembourg. It wasn't a scenic route, it was a military supply line built to move troops and equipment fast through terrain that would otherwise slow everything down. In the First World War, the Vennbahn became exactly what it was designed to be, a strategic artery feeding the Western Front, which meant that when Germany lost the war, everyone at the peace conference noticed it. And Belgium showed up at Versailles with a very specific shopping list. The war is over, Germany is lost, and to the victor goes the spoils. The victors gathered at Versailles to decide what happens next. France gets Alsace-Lorraine, Poland gets its corridor, and Belgium, which had been invaded and occupied, wants reparations. What they asked for included the districts of Eupen and Malmedy, just east of the existing border, about 60,000 people, mostly German speakers, and they specifically wanted the Vennbahn, the entire railway, from Aachen down to the Luxembourg border, not part of it, all of it. Article 35 of the treaty gave them exactly that, the entire railway, the stations, the embankment, and the ribbon of land the track sat on, all of it Belgium now. If you've ever played Ticket to Ride, it's a board game where you claim train routes across Europe. You already understand the basic logic here. Whoever controls the railway controls the connection. Belgium didn't want the land, they wanted the line. And in 1919 they got it. Now here's where it gets complicated. The Vennbahn doesn't run straight. The high fens and the high plateau, it forced the railway to loop and curve back on itself. So the ribbons of Belgium land it created didn't follow a tidy border. It cut back and forth across what it was. Everywhere around it, still Germany. It took until 1921 and 1922 for the Commission of the Boundary to actually survey and demarcate the line precisely. And when they finished, something became clear that hadn't been fully visible on the Versailles maps. 5 pockets of German territory were now completely surrounded by Belgium. No road connecting them to Germany, no direct access. The only way in or out ran through a foreign country, even if that was just a sliver of land. I said 5, but it's 6 actually. There were originally 6 enclaves, but we'll come back to that. The people of Monchaux sent immediate protest. They felt cut off from a vital artery. The Belgians were worried enough about potential sabotage that in May of 1920, they deployed 200-strong military units to guard the Vennbahn. But before the enclaves, there was the matter of the 60,000 German speakers now inside Belgium proper. The League of Nations required a referendum. The population needed to consent to the change. The Belgians organized one, sort of. It wasn't a secret ballot. If you wanted to remain German, you had to travel, often hours because the registrars were only available in Eupen and Malmedy. Sign your name on a public list in front of Belgian officials with your identity on record. The Belgian administration didn't exactly advertise this was happening. You want to see something crazy? Only 271 people signed. And Belgium declared this proof of consent. It went into the history books as Petite Farce Belge, the little Belgian joke, which is a very polite way of describing what happened. Overnight, 60,000 people who spoke German and had always been German and had not meaningfully voted for anything were Belgium now. And the pockets of German territory were islands in a Belgian sea, cut off by the railway line their own government had built. So what was it actually like to live on one of these German islands? Stranger than you'd think, and far more human. Take Reutzhof, a tiny village at the meeting of two small rivers. It had a few houses, some farms, and one little traveled road. From the western edge on a clear day, you could see the church spire and the village of Kalterherberg across the valley. Hedwig's Paul was born in Reutzhof in 1926, 5 years after it became a German enclave. She later recalled that growing up there, she never really had the feeling of being separated from Germany. Life went on. People knew each other. The border guards were familiar faces. German kids would cross paths with Belgian kids on the bridge at the edge of the hamlet. The Belgians called the Germans Bolsch. The Germans hollered back, "Hungry rat pack." Then everyone went home for dinner. The border crossing itself took about 15 minutes, which sounds minor until you consider that the visitors found it such a hassle they rarely came. The Paul's family didn't get very many guests. Although, Hedwig noted, if you knew who was on duty, you could usually arrange for things to be streamlined. And then came the post-war economy and ruins on the German side, which created a sneaky little opportunity. Coffee. A kilo of roasted coffee cost 8 marks in Belgium. In Germany, you could sell it for 16 or more. The border that separated these enclave villages from Germany also put them right at the center of the most lucrative smuggling corridor in the region. The village of Mützenich, one of the Vennbahn's enclave communities, became so central to the trade that by 1953, an estimated 1,000 tons of coffee had been smuggled across the border through the area. When authorities finally cracked down, 52 smugglers ended up in a prison in Cologne waiting for trial. 45 of them were from Mützenich alone. The village's young Catholic pastor, a man named Scheidt, went to go visit them in the prison. Not just to offer spiritual comfort though, he also gave them some practical advice. Keep your mouth shut and don't snitch, because nobody needed to put their neighbors in jail with them. Even the priest was on their side. For 2 decades, the enclave residents lived this quiet, slightly absurd existence. Then Germany got a new government, one with very strong feelings about Germans living under foreign flags. Through the 1920s, the move to the East Cantons was getting worse. In 1926, Belgium's government quietly floated an idea. What if we just sold it back to Germany? Germany was apparently interested. The price, 200 million Reichsmarks. France vetoed and said no. That's the whole story. France said no. And that was that. 60,000 people not consulted, yet again. In 1929, more than 75% of voters supported political parties whose main platform was simple. That referendum was a joke. Do it properly this time and fix it. These were German speakers who had been handed to Belgium by a ledger that 271 people signed. They hadn't forgotten. After 1933, Nazi organizations started popping up in the area. Sports clubs, cultural associations, political movements. The Nazi regional leader of Cologne even complained that East Cantons were too Catholic to be proper Nazis. But the money and support kept flowing anyways. May 10, 1940, Germany invades Belgium. 8 days later, Hitler issues a personal decree. Eupen, Malmedy, Saint-Vith are all brought home to the German Reich, not as occupied territory, fully annexation. The Belgian government didn't even formally protest. Hitler issued a lot of orders. A personal decree specifically naming this region this quickly tells you exactly how much the 1919 decision in Versailles had been festering over 20 years. In Saint-Vith, Johanna Gallo Schmidt later recalled what happened when she was just 4 years old in 1940. She explains exactly what changed in school. The crucifix came down from the classroom wall. A Hitler portrait went up in its place. On the radio, folk songs disappeared. What replaced it she called Hitlerlieder. Hitler songs about being brave and being a hero, which her and her classmates sang along to. For the enclave communities, the annexation briefly ended some of the nonsense. The German islands were just Germany again. The Vennbahn, a military railway again. Some people celebrated. These were German speakers who had spent 20 years as Belgians against their will. For some, May 1940 generally felt like coming home. But then came the draft notices. Nearly 9,000 men from East Cantons were conscripted into the German military. 3,200 never came back. Home, it turned out, was complicated. And then came the winter of 1944. The Vennbahn found itself at the center of Germany's last desperate gamble in the West. December 16, 1944. Germany launches its last major offensive in the west. The goal was Antwerp, to cut off Allied supply lines, split the British and American forces, and force a negotiated peace. The attack stretched across 88 miles of the front. The Vennbahn corridor is a key logistics route. The railway that helped start all of this is now carrying the weight of the desperate offensive. Saint-Vith holds. For a week, the town resists, delaying the German advance at a moment when supply lines were already critically stretched. The resistance at Saint-Vith was impactful. 4 days of delay when every hour counted. And then the skies cleared. Christmas Eve. Christmas Day. Allied bombers target Saint-Vith, which German forces had just taken. 153 civilians were killed, over 1,000 soldiers, nearly 600 buildings destroyed, 90% of the town gone. A woman named Anna Krings had just given birth. She fled through the night with her newborn in her arms, taking a wide detour around the burning city. Many of the dead could only be recovered and identified after the snow melted in the spring. The town that the Vennbahn had built also made it a target that got destroyed. The war ends and Belgium reclaims everything, but the annexation was declared invalid under international law. The German enclaves reappear on the map, islands again, right back where they were in 1922. The Vennbahn itself never fully recovered after the war. Some sections were damaged, some beyond economic repair. Train traffic declined through the 1950s and 1960s as cars and trucks took over. In the late 1940s, Belgium and Germany actually negotiated a series of small border adjustments. There were originally 6 German enclaves on the Vennbahn. Belgium briefly took control of all 6. Then in 1956, both countries signed a proper border treaty. By 1958, Amaris, the southernmost enclave with a grand total of 5 households, was returned to West Germany. The other adjustments were tidied up as well. 5 enclaves remained though, and they were confined by Belgium permanently. In the 1990s, the train stopped running entirely. Germany assumed the land would come back since the treaty mentioned a functioning railway as part of the deal. Well, you know what happens when you assume. Belgium said no. The railway tracks became a cycling trail, a popular cycling path in Belgium that draws tourists from across Europe, who cycle occasionally, crossing these German enclaves and back without realizing it. And you never know unless your phone tells you. And that's what's left. 5 pieces of Germany, completely surrounded by a Belgian bike path. It's an interesting chain of events with the Vennbahn. A legal technicality written into a peace treaty in 1919, a Nazi annexation, post-war border negotiations, and the end of the railway itself. And now it's a tourist attraction. Oh, and that smallest enclave, the one house on 1.5 hectares that is still Germany, its name is Rückschlag. In German, Ruck means backwards, Schlag means blow or strike. A Rückschlag is a setback, or failure, but it also could mean blowback or the recoil of a weapon. And if that's the case, I think it's funny that Belgium used the Vennbahn as a weapon at Versailles, and that the smallest piece of the territory left behind is named for what happens when a weapon fires back or failure. I don't know if anyone planned that, but it's perfect. Belgium claimed their route in 1919. Whoever controls the line controls the connection, remember? Well, the train stopped. The line became a bike path. So I guess it's less ticket to ride now, and more ticket to cycle. And if you know anything about cycling infrastructure in Europe, you already know who dominates that game. The Dutch. It's always the Dutch. Speaking of Belgium and things that don't make sense on a map, if you want to understand why a country exists the way it does, that video is on screen now. A 2,000-year-old Roman road explains more of modern Belgium than it has any right to. This is Mapped Out with Sean. Thanks for watching.